Our next contestant, Chris Warford, the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, Chris Warford.
Dun 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 dun. I should probably explain. This is me doing Parkrun, a 5-kilometre organised run that takes place every week. Every Saturday morning, I run my heart out, but my dad runs faster. Not just a little bit faster, his personal best is a clear 2 minutes ahead of mine. No matter what I do, I cannot keep up with the man. I even hired a personal trainer to come down and watch me run. Dun 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 dun. He said, "Chris, you could run significantly faster if you stopped singing the theme to Chariots of Fire." But that wasn't my style. So there I was, stuck 2 minutes behind a man twice my age. He was just too fit for me to keep up with. But it wasn't always this way. It started 25 years ago, when my grandfather was tiling a bathroom. Suddenly a pain shot down his arm, his vision became blurry and he began to sweat profusely. Next thing we knew, his lumbering frame came crashing to the ground. My dad rode with him in the ambulance. We could have almost seen this coming. It was no secret that my grandfather was massively overweight, that he ate too many sweets, that he never did any exercise. This wasn't even his first heart attack, but he wouldn't survive this one. And as my dad looked down into his eyes in the ambulance, he swore that this would not be his fate, that he would not leave his children prematurely. And 25 years later, he's still running. The worst case scenario brought out the best in him. We often imagine that our lives are defined by our achievements, the things that have gone really well. But the truth is that our life is far more defined by the times when it's gone badly, when we've had to face the worst case scenario and found out what we were made of. But what was the worst case scenario for you when you first walked through that door to Toastmasters? What was the worst case scenario in life? When I first met my friend Alan, he hadn't seen his daughter in nearly 10 years. She lived in Italy, and he was too afraid to get on that plane and go see her. He was scared of rejection, scared it had been too long, scared that she wouldn't want to see him. And then he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Now Alan's story reminds me of the journalist Marta Hillers, a woman who was defined by the worst case scenario. What made her one of the most acclaimed writers in Germany was not her excellent travel writing. She toiled in obscurity for years. It was what happened in 1945 when the Soviet army rolled into Berlin, raping an estimated 2 million German women. Hillers did what she always did. She wrote. She wrote when her meagre provisions were stolen. She wrote when 2 Soviet soldiers took her from the stairs. She wrote when she was forced to accept an oncoming officer just to get a loaf of bread. Her courage in continuing to do what she did made it acceptable for an entire generation of German women to talk about the experiences they'd been through. Her most valuable contribution to society only came when the worst case scenario arrived. And we see this time and time again. Michael Jordan had the most successful basketball career of all time, but only after being dropped by his high school for being too short. Steve Jobs built Pixar and saved Apple computers, but only after being fired by the company that he founded. The worst case scenario brought the best in them. What about Alan? 4 weeks after diagnosis, he was on that plane. He told me, "I knew if I didn't do it now, I might never get the chance." Now he and his daughter are closer than ever, and she regularly visits him in the UK. Alan needed the worst case scenario to force him to act. It wasn't that he didn't know what to do or he needed a reminder, but so often we become a prisoner of our own anxiety. We don't realise that the worst case scenario happening is what will set us free. It's not standing here in this contest that tells you how good a public speaker you are. This is easy. For me, it was when my grandma passed away and my family turned to me and said, "Chris, you're the Toastmaster, you give the eulogy." How do you do justice to a woman who's lived 90 years, to the people that loved her the most? It was the hardest speech I have ever written, but it was probably the best. The worst case scenario brought the best in me. So what was the worst case scenario when you first walked through that door to Toastmasters? That you forget your lines? That you'd completely mess your speech up? That you'd be so embarrassed that you couldn't even come back? Now ask yourself, what was the speech where you learnt the most? Was it the one where everything went perfectly? Or was it the one where you made the mistakes, you got the feedback, and you had the chance to learn and to grow? A life well lived isn't handed to you on a plate. It's not spun out of easy victories. It is carved out of adversity. It is what happens when the worst case scenario occurs and we face it. Because when we do, we find out that we are bigger, stronger, more amazing people than we ever thought possible. It's when we make our most valuable contributions to society, like Hillers, like Jobs, like Jordan, when we find the courage to reconnect with our loved ones like Alan, when we're able to write that perfect speech, or we find the dedication to keep running for 25 years. When life hands you a choice, an opportunity, don't ask yourself what the best case scenario is. Ask yourself what the worst is. And the worse it is, the more you should grab it with both hands. Because the worst case scenario brings out the best in all of us.